Welcome to this episode of Forgiving the Girl Inside, a Matter of the Heart. I'm your hostess, Lisa Drennan, energetic mindset mentor, business strategist, author of Forgiving the Girl Inside, Finding Balance, Freedom, and Fun in Your Life. And if you're looking for help with any of that, you got to connect because it's incredible how unforgiveness keeps us stuck, keeps us from living out our passion, living out our purpose. Today, we have special guest Elizabeth Kipp with us. She is going to be sharing her healing journey story on an incredible modality that I'm not 100% familiar with. So I'll let her share it with you. But what's really cool is that I asked my guests to fill out this questionnaire form and give me 3 possible titles for the show. And one of the titles that Elizabeth chose was How to Forgive for Real. And that so resonated with my heart. If you've been following me, if you subscribe to my podcast, every Friday, I do a solo episode called Forgiving Friday, and it's my healing journey of how I forgave yours truly, the girl inside. And we always have this something that we're holding on to. Everyone experiences pain, overwhelm, or some kind of trauma that they dealt with. And it could have gone back as young as 6 months, 12 months, 5 years old. It doesn't really matter. It could have been something that happened in young adulthood. But what happens in my experience is that we don't grieve that pain. We don't process that pain. And our bodies remember it. And what you don't process, I like to refer to it as talk therapy. It gets stuck and it comes out as physical pain. And I believe we're going to hear a little bit about that today from Elizabeth, but we're just going to kind of see how this story flows from our heart to your heart. So Elizabeth is a chronic pain specialist, a yoga-informed addiction recovery coach, ancestral clearing practitioner, yoga and meditation teacher, and international best-selling author of The Way Through Chronic Pain, Tools to Reclaim Your Healing Power. I love that. There are tools to claim your healing power. So let's find out how you can use those. And welcome, Elizabeth. Very excited to have you here for you to share your journey. So tell us about this. I think I really want to get into this ancestral clearing and that connection with the chronic pain.
Oh,
How did you come across this?
well, I had chronic pain. I suffered with chronic pain for over 40 years, which was, it turns out, um, it was really mostly emotional. I just didn't know that because for your audience, let's define what chronic pain is so we all start from the same space, right?
Yes.
Chronic pain is any pain that's felt, physical, emotional, mental, financial, spiritual, any of that grief, right? Any pain that's felt 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more is chronic. The brain can't tell the difference between one kind of pain and another. It can't tell the difference between a broken bone and a broken heart. It all sends the same signal to the brain. It hurts. And why is that important? A, so that we understand what chronic pain is, and B, because chronic pain actually fundamentally changes the brain. It brings in a lot of chaos. Any of your listeners or friends that know people that are in chronic pain will know these symptoms. There's brain fog, there's chaos in the brain. I can't remember what I just said. I don't remember what I had for breakfast, that kind of stuff. And there's also a pronounced negative mind, not just kind of the little bit of bias that we all have, but a pronounced negative mind where it's all your fault or it's all my fault. And it's pretty heavy stuff. So that's what chronic pain does. And in order to heal that, we don't heal it with drugs. We heal it with modalities that heal those changes. One of them is ancestral clearing, and another one is meditation. And those are the 2 things that I start new clients with. The problem with meditation, just as a side note, and we'll get into ancestral clearing in a moment. If meditation, the first thing I do with people before I teach them meditation is, or ask about that, is to ask them if they can sit still. And people have difficulty with that. And there's a couple of reasons. One is when they were younger, and maybe this happened to you, it certainly happened to me. sit down and be quiet. We had that, right? So if we've still got that in the nervous system, we're going to, we're not going to be regulated around that situation, right? We're all nervous around sitting still because we've got that program running in us. The other is just a general trauma response. When we get when we are in trauma response, we freeze. And so you have to be careful about who you're teaching meditation to, because if you ask them to sit still and they've got unresolved trauma in the system, that they could be in that space again. And so you want to, I don't actually have them sit still. I use music. I use mantra music and bring meditation into them that way, so that there's movement, so that they're not actually sitting still, if that makes sense. So we have to kind of know the audience. Yeah. So
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Music is so soothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, it provides a little bit of hypnotic energy to the mind, right? And it provides somewhere for the energy, to the nervous energy about sitting like that. It provides it some movement. So it's got somewhere to go, right? So it's a great, sweet, soft way to bring meditation into someone who's got this, got trauma in the system, which most of us do. Anyway, so chronic pain for a long time. I did have an accident when I was 14 that broke the 5th lumbar in my spine, and it broke front to back. So the front part of the vertebrae slipped forward and pulled the leg nerves with it. And I lived with that for a long time, and then for about 14 years. And then it became very unstable, and I had to have surgery. I had 3 surgeries, structural surgeries. And then I had a corrective surgery after that, where they brought a lot of pain medicine because they didn't know how to treat chronic pain. And other than, you got to live with it. Which was incorrect. I didn't have to live with it, but that's the best that they knew. And that's what we did, until I found a doctor that really truly understood chronic pain. And anyway, so when I did find this doctor that understood chronic pain, and I went into his chronic pain management program, and there was an ancestral clearing practitioner there. And that's when I learned ancestral clearing. That was John Newton, who's my teacher, John Newton of healthbeyondbelief.com. He's the one that teaches. He has trademarked and registered this process. And he's the only one that teaches it. And I happen to be a practitioner. I was so impressed with it that I was like, what's happening here? And can you measure this? And because my science hat was on, and does he teach it, right? And is it repeatable? Right? So anyway, I the first opportunity I had after I got out of the program, I went and learned the process, and I've been doing it every day ever since, somewhere on the planet with somebody. It's one of the sweetest things in the world to do. And it's 80% of it's based on forgiveness. Some of it, part of it's based on a presence, and I'll take everybody through a little piece of it. But I learned that, and it's based on the premise that we come into this world with the gifts and the burdens of our ancestors, unresolved trauma. And we know science has been able to validate that, for instance, Holocaust survivors, the imprint, or the imprint of that tragedy passes down. And I work with people, occasionally I'll work with somebody who's I usually work with grandchildren of the Holocaust, people in the Holocaust. Sometimes I work with the children, but mostly it's grandchildren, and they have the same imprint. So anyway, we bring this process, and it helps to release the burden. And you said in the beginning that we don't, I think you said something about what happens when we have trauma or we've got pain and we don't acknowledge it is we suppress it.
Right.
And that's when it gets stuck in the system. It gets into the epigenetic, it gets into the DNA through the epigene, through the environment, through the epigenetics, the genes on the outside of the gene, the little epigenomes on the outside of the gene, they're little on-off switches.
Mhm.
more technical maybe than you want to get, but that's how it gets imprinted and that gets passed on. Whatever condition those switches are on, that gets passed on to the next generation. And we have the opportunity in our environmental situation to change those switches. And ancestral clearing works on that level. So does yoga, so does massage, so does Reiki, so does like a bunch of other modalities that you probably bring in.
Right. Well, I practice aromatherapy. So we use Young Living essential oils.
Mhm.
And the breathing process, we reflect on, one of the processes that we do is reflecting on something that's overwhelming or we're fearful of, or, if we want to accomplish a goal, and being very focused, following certain steps, breathing in the oils through a process helps clear a lot of those blocks to bring joy. So we have a doomsday technique, and we have a technique to, like I said, to reach goals, to clear I lost my train of thought, to clear, like if you want to release weight, or you want to, build your business. So whatever the goal, it's very specific and laid out. So I'm familiar with that. I'm familiar with tapping. But the ancestral clearing I never heard of. It reminds me of just like, the generational curse in scripture talks about to the third and fourth generation. I think of Adam and how original sin is carried out through the world. And it kind of, when you were saying that about I cannot speak today, the Holocaust survivors, that would make sense though, too, because I know before my mom passed away, we were talking about like her history. And I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. And just from my parents being divorced and all that, there's a lot of things that I picked up, that I learned behavior that I suppressed, but I, as a parent, mimicked those things. And it was just like, wait a minute, I don't want to be that way. Why am I doing this? And then I realized, our brains are very conditioned to what we observe, and our families make such an impact and imprint. And I always just thought of it as what we physically saw, but it's actually what we hear. And like you said, it's just carried on. And that makes total sense. So as you're developing in the womb, why wouldn't you absorb that environment? Because you're very well aware. And even though we can't remember it, it's in our subconscious. And our subconscious, I'm not a science person, but I know our subconscious holds 95% of all of our thoughts and stuff. And being on the unforgiving, not being able to forgive myself for choices that I made, really created this outpouring of anger and frustration and people pleasing, because the way I looked at myself and the thoughts that I told myself and what I believed about myself. And some of it was learned behavior, people's beliefs in my family telling me certain things while I was growing up that I thought were truth. And now I look back and it's like, no. And aromatherapy, I did tapping a little bit. But I was talking to a group of ladies last night. We had a Bible study, and it was like, talk therapy should be something implemented in our everyday life, because when you can speak something out loud, you can heal. And I like how you said about the chronic pain coming out through finances, through relationships, because you never think about that. And it is when you're financially, when you're living paycheck to paycheck, when you don't have that money for that emergency fund, you still have debt from student loans, and you've been in your career for 20 years, that creates a pain that you don't even realize it. And subconsciously you're stuck. But I've never really looked at it from that perspective. So that's a really great perspective. So when someone comes to you, you had said that you bring them through the process. Do you have an assessment, like a questionnaire, or how do you know where to start with the meditation, and whether or not they're going to be a good fit for this technique that you have?
Yeah, great question. I haven't actually met anyone that that the ancestral clearing process didn't serve, which as a scientist, wow, that surprised me. I was like, wow, it seems to fit in all kinds of, so that's kind of interesting to me. And so what I do is people come to me if they want straight ancestral clearing, and people, I work with all kinds of people around that. But if it's somebody comes to me with chronic pain, the first thing I do is I listen to their story for about 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to hear, it's important that they can sit across from somebody else who really understands the territory of chronic pain, that they can be seen and heard, that
Mhm.
they can voice, what's up for them. It's really important. But beyond about 5 or 6 minutes, I stop there, because so many of us in chronic pain, and it's just part of what happens. It happened to me. It happens to so many of us. We become identified with the pain. Now, here's the thing. I'm not my pain. I'm experiencing pain. My body is experiencing pain, but it's not who I am. And that distinction is huge in terms of being able to heal. Because I'm not taking the pain personally, but I did for a long time. I took it personally. So the first thing I do is I listen to the story. I get a handle on kind of what their story is. And then I ask them if they would allow me to take them through the ancestral clearing process. And we do that, because if I can help them release old worry energy, or, who knows what they're carrying, the process reveals itself to us. Then like I just did a session on a new client today, and the issue was a lost child in the lineage, and the process revealed it. So the way the process works is it reveals itself to us, and as soon as we identified that, she felt this huge release in her body of energy. It was really interesting, and I just, it included with a bunch of other stuff, and she was like, "Wow, when you did that one," I was like, "That was it." It was interesting, and I do this. Been doing this for 7.5 years, pretty much every day somewhere on the planet, and I still got the hair on my back stood up when that happened.
Mhm.
I'm still awed and humbled by this process, because we're calling in source energy to help us, creator energy, God energy. We're asking them. I don't do any healing. I just help focus this conversation between God energy and the listener, the
Mhm.
client. And then I'm just focusing that then. So that's how that works. Kind of, it's kind of like trying to describe what chocolate is to people, to use chocolate, right? To use it with words. Second thing I do
Yeah.
is an listen to the story, ancestral clearing. Then I ask them if they can sit still, and we do work around staying still, and I take them into meditation. Why is that important? Because meditation helps calm the changes in the brain. It helps calm the mind of that chaos that I talked about that we get in chronic pain. It's the strongest thing we can do is to meditate 20 minutes twice a day. And you can do it to music. I did it for, as I cleared my pain and came out of Dr. Peter Prescott's program, who wrote this book, Conquer Chronic Pain, an Innovative Mind-Body Approach, by Dr. Peter Prescott, who passed away, but I teach the book, and the book's still available on Amazon. It's a great book. It goes with my book. He said, use the tools every day, so for the rest of your life. So 20 minutes meditation twice a day is kind of non-negotiable to help the brain heal and keep it on track, because it'll slip into its old habits of negativity and all that stuff. That meditation helped calm the mind, but it also helped clear the negativity.
Yeah. So do you practice this on yourself as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I actually don't teach anything that I don't do myself. I don't
Well,
feel
that's
like
important.
I don't feel like that would be useful at all if I taught something I didn't know about.
This is true. Well, sometimes it's hard to practice something on yourself because we can't see really, we can't look at ourselves and say, oh yeah, this is exactly what the problem is. We're kind of blocked, and you need that mentor, your accountability partner, to look, okay, this is where you're stuck. This is where you need to be redirected.
That's so true. And I put myself in front of other teachers to show me that, right? And I have other ancestral clearing practitioners that do ancestral clearing for me. I do my own, but when I feel like, oh, this is really sticky, I'll go to somebody else that's a practitioner, and they help me with it, because I can't see my own stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're exactly right.
absolutely. No one can see. That's why it's so important. I know when I was stuck, I didn't know that unforgiveness for my inner child, for what I did when I was younger, what I experienced when I was younger, was my blocker. And I didn't realize that my self-sabotage and people pleasing was my hiding from that. And, years of therapy didn't reveal that. And in 2013, when I started my gratitude journal, I took read Ann Camp's book, 1000 Gifts, Dare to Live Life Differently. And I love challenges. So 10 things a day that you're thankful for and the reason why. And to this day, I'm still doing it, but it really changed my heart. And it took me from 2013 until May of 2021 to explore forgiveness, what it means. For me, forgiveness equaled forget. You forget. And there was no way I was forgetting any of it. There's just, especially because it was me. I was the one that needed the forgiveness. And to make that realization, words are so powerful. So, you had touched on how it's all about forgiveness, and forgiving the girl inside, a matter of the heart, is about looking within and how do you begin that process? I know for me, it was a journey. It's a daily healing journey. It's something I have to practice every day. I have my things that I won't compromise, no matter how late I get up. I'm meditating on scripture. I'm doing this, my prayers, I'm doing my walk, I'm doing my yoga, I'm doing, all of these things, even if it's for 5 minutes because I'm running late because I overslept. So there's no excuses. Journaling is a big part of it. Giving thanks is huge for me, because when you can give thanks beyond for all of your circumstances, regardless of what you're experiencing, something good comes out of that. But when we look at the word forgiveness, a lot of people will look at that and think, well, they don't deserve forgiveness. I don't care how it affects me, not realizing that it's affecting them directly. So can you share your thoughts on that?
Sure, I can. A couple of things. I'd like to say that the first thing that I heard, because my ancestral clearing, John Newton, talks about this. Forgiveness means to forego, or well, it's a couple of things. Forget is one of them, and forego or offer up. So, and I'll talk about the offering up in just a moment, but the forget part, I was like, but I still remember it, right? I don't seem to be forgetting. I'm missing that part of the process. And I realized for me, what it is my body forgets. I don't feel the charge in the body anymore around the issue. That's gone. I still have the episode memory, but there's no charge around it. And it certainly doesn't come up as a thing in my life. It's like somebody takes me back to that moment. I'm like, oh yeah, this thing happened, but I don't have this in the body. So in that sense, we truly forget. And when you forget in the body, you've actually forgotten, right? That's a big thing.
Yeah.
You asked about the process. I actually, so I have this science background, and I had done some forgiveness work prior to meeting John around my own issue with another family member, and a couple of years before I even ran into John. And I was already starting in this work because I realized how important it was. It just changed the dynamics between myself and this other person. And as soon as I did the personal work around it, was a thing I had with someone in my family. As soon as I did the work around it, the family member immediately felt it. And I'd never said anything to anybody about it, but I get a call 2 days later from this person, and like we completely, the energy had completely changed. So very important note there. The energy that we're putting out affects other people. Fun in a very fundamental way. And anyway, so with my science background, I have this tendency, like I love the woo-woo, but I need a grounded, I need to be grounded in it, right? So, and my element in Chinese medicine is wood. So that kind of makes sense with the way I operate. So I started thinking about, well, let's have a process around forgiveness, and what's the process that I use, because I wanted a grounded process that people could actually put their teeth around, that they could really work. So I developed one, and there's like these steps. And so the how is, the first one is in the first step in the letting go process is presencing yourself to what's happening with you in this thing. So being honest and being present. The next is, what meaning am I making about what happened? So if it's about me and I'm not forgiving myself for something that I did, then, I made it mean I'm a bad person. And I don't deserve, in my case, I went all the way to, I don't even deserve God's love. I kind of went there with it. That's where I
Yeah.
went. Everybody goes there, but I went there.
Yeah.
Then the third step is where the next piece is accept our humanness. Accept our humanness. So we're spiritual beings having a human journey. And so accepting our humanness, anger and frustration is part of the experience, right? So we accept all parts of ourselves. It's an integrative process. This process I'm using speaks to an integrative process. Then I may not be able to forgive myself, but I can become willing to forgive myself, right? If I just can't do it, but I can become willing. Huge step. Then, because I don't know how to do it myself, I ask for help from a higher authority. So that's when we bring creator energy in. Then I drop my judgments about the situation. This thing happened. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm bad. It just means this thing happened, right? I did this thing. Maybe I made a mistake here, but it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. You know what I'm saying? I drop the judgment. And then I let go of the fear of uncertainty. Because in the process of I've been hanging on to this thing for so long, I can't forgive, I can't forgive, I can't forgive, I can't forgive. And now I'm getting ready to let go. And then what's going to happen? So you let go of that fear. You just understand now something new is going to happen. Things always change. So we accept that change might be coming and we continue to live in the present. And those are the steps. I mean, it sounds, I don't know how it sounds, but those are the steps that I came up with. And I could put that cycle on repeat if you want. I ended up developing a 40 Days of Forgiveness program. And you get an email. It was really hard. It took me 18 months to develop this program because I wrote 41 different blogs on forgiveness, like forgiving around brothers and sisters, and forgiving around mothers and fathers, and forgiving around the unforgivable. I can't even forgive that, right? How do you forgive for that, right? So there were 41, and it took me all that time. You'll find this hilarious. It took me all that time because I'd get to number 15 or something, and I go, well, I can't even think of another one. And you know what would happen? Something in my life would show up, and I'd have to forgive. It would be a big aspect of, and I was like, cracking up because, it's like the creator has a sense of humor as I'm asking for help, and he's totally giving me an assignment in. And that's how I developed the program. So, and the teaching, the why and how of forgiveness is the foundation of the program.
That's awesome. That totally resonates with me. I have a guide, seven steps to forgiveness. In 2017, I grabbed this out of my my storage. In June 10th of 2017, I did a woman's prayer, that was an announcement. Misspoke. When was this retreat? I did a retreat on forgiveness, and this is the program from there. And the date of it was in 2000 and, oh, where's the date? 2017. It was in March of 2017. And it was all about the forgiveness journey. So from it, there's 7 steps that I had taken, and I blogged about it. And now I'm turning it into a PDF to give away. I'm actually just creating that as we speak. So it totally resonated with me. The steps that we take are very similar, but it's all about just acknowledging it. And, I have the Forgiving Friday solo podcast is how to forgive the unforgivable, something that I had experienced. And it's, I think about, I can extend forgiveness for family members, relatives, bosses, coworkers, things like that. But when it comes to yourself, it's so personable. It's you. And it's like, how do I forgive myself? Well, how do I move forward? But it's the same exact process. And a lot of times we get caught up in a relationship because of the different levels of trust that we have. And if you can't trust yourself, not to do the right things, and it's like you're almost thinking you're going to repeat it. And I think that's like where the upbringing comes, the things, our worldview instills in us. Well, I can't change this, but wait a minute, I want to change that. And that anger and that frustration, they say anger is depression turned outward. And one of the things I struggled with for years, and I liked how you had said that I don't think you used the word choice. I'm not sure exactly how you said it. I should have written it down. I was at a point in my forgiveness journey where I'm like, okay, I'll forgive myself, but I didn't. So I think you said your willingness to forgive. I'm willing to forgive myself.
Mhm.
So in January of 2019, I was willing to forgive myself, but it took me until May 7th of 2021 to truly forgive myself and to understand that I received forgiveness from God, and that I received forgiveness for my 2 unborn children, who I aborted when I was 16 years old. And that journey, that release, when you're talking about just
Mhm.
that
Well,
woman that you worked with, it's a beautiful release, because that loss of the child, and you just can see that lifting. It's almost like just this visual I get. So
no wonder
incredible,
we found each,
incredible.
no wonder we found each other. That was the thing that I had to forgive myself for, was an abortion. And
Yeah.
I find this to be rather common, um, a common sticking point with women, a common sticking
Hmm.
point with women that have had this experience, that just, it stops them in their tracks. Remember I said
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I deserved God's love. No way.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why I went there. Yeah. So it's interesting
Yeah.
that happens to be what happened to be the thing that stopped you. Yeah, it stopped me too. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so deep and so primal. It takes a
It,
lot of
it
work,
is.
and I'm bowing to you for the work that you've done around it, because it's big work. Yeah.
It was huge. It was. And, God brought different modalities to me to help me with it. And thank you for sharing, because I thought it was the only one. And one of my dreams is to open up Divine Timing Ministries, which is going to be a place for women who can get the post-abortion care. Because society doesn't see that part of us. They don't see what we went through. And, even if you're for it, I mean, I can't say I was ever like, I never thought abortion was okay. I was 16 and I was told that they weren't babies. And I didn't believe that in my heart. In my heart, I thought there's a disconnect, but I wasn't mature enough. I was, with a narcissist gaslighter, and he said jump. I said how high. And it was just like, okay, I didn't even have my own thought process. And that's such a vulnerable age, but I thought it defined me. And I liked how you said, your titles don't define you, your pain doesn't define you. And I think a lot of us get stuck in titles, we get stuck in our duties, and we don't really figure out what our purpose is. We don't think we're good enough because I was an alcoholic, I was a druggie, I was this, I was that, just fill in the blank. And I really want to help women heal from that. And there's so many different modalities. So thank you so much for sharing. I just really appreciate that. And I know so many ladies out there listening to this story, and it sounds like you work with men as well, um, who need this release. So, whoever's here listening live, thank you for joining us. If you're watching replay, #replay, um, connect with Elizabeth. Get this clearing if this resonates with you. Connect with me if you'd like to try my modality. Aromatherapy is huge in helping clear the unforgiveness that we hold against ourselves. And I tell you, if you're somebody who looks in the mirror and starts doubting yourself, beating yourself up, criticizing yourself, if you've got a laundry list going for yourself, we're here to help you. You are not alone. Anything you've done can be forgiven. There is no unforgivable sin. You are good. You are designed by God for greatness, and you are created for a purpose. You can stop hiding behind the pain and get relief from that, whether you do tapping, ancestral, whatever it is. But just know you don't have to be stuck. So Elizabeth is going to share her links, her description. This will be here live in this page, and then in a couple of weeks, it's going to be uploaded onto your favorite podcast site, onto YouTube. So you can always download it and get it there as well. And if you know someone that this resonates with, please share it with them. And thank you so much, Elizabeth, for sharing this space with me and the audience. I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. It was a pleasure to speak with you today and to get in front of your audience to share this work with your audience. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And remember, every day is a daily healing journey. It's all a matter of the heart.